guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today's video is a sketchbook review. I've had this sketchbook for absolutely ages and never got round to actually doing a review, so I think it's about time I did one considering it's almost finished. Hope you enjoy the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you do. Okay, so it's taken me forever to actually do this review. I honestly thought I'd already done one, but clearly I never did. Technically, this isn't actually a sketchbook either. It is meant to be a scrapbook. I used to do a lot of scrapbooking. I used to take stacks of photographs, lay them all out really nicely on the pages, do little notes and everything to go with it. But it's a hobby I don't tend to do as much anymore. Number one being I don't actually tend to take that many photos, and secondly I much prefer actually just drawing and then having a little note by the side of my drawings about something that's happened that day if it's captured my interest, or just bringing a sketchbook with me if I can and doodling at the same time. So scrapbooking I used to genuinely enjoy, and my sister originally got me this book for my birthday to carry on scrapbooking, but yeah, by that point I decided that I didn't really want to carry on. But the good thing about scrapbooks, especially the scrapbooks from Paperchase, is the paper quality is actually really good. It's about 300 GSM, which is really thick paper, which is perfect for drawing on. So I thought, no, I actually needed a new sketchbook, so I'm going to change it and use it as an actual sketchbook. At first, I genuinely loved this sketchbook. I had originally been working in a B5 sketchbook, which is basically in between an A5 and an A4 sketchbook, and I have done a sketchbook tour of that very first one. And I enjoyed the sketchbook so much, but I found it difficult to be working so small because I was used to working on A3 sizes for portraits. So when I got this sketchbook, which is slightly shallower than an A4 page, but it's wider, so it's a square page. So that sort of sizing worked really well for me, especially at first because I was enjoying drawing big, and although I couldn't fit maybe all of it on the page, I could get enough composition to be doing some practice runs of the pieces that I then wanted to paint, because at the time I was doing a lot of things on canvas. So this was really helpful initially. And because the paper quality is so thick, it would put up with quite a lot of the mediums that I was using. So obviously here I'm using pencil, which you would expect at least every single sketchbook to be able to deal with, but it can also deal with fine liners and things which my previous A5 sketchbook couldn't really do without some bleed through. And it can also deal with water-based mediums such as watercolour and gouache with very minimal buckling on the page. So I was really impressed with the quality of this paper and the size of it, especially back then. On top of that, it had a spiral bound spine, which is amazing when you're drawing because it means that everything can lay flat, which makes it a lot easier to draw on, and also when you're using water-based mediums, because that way the paint is not going to run just because the paper can't lay flat. So I was really impressed with this and I really wanted to use it as a sketchbook, and at first it did me really well, and yeah, I genuinely loved it. But it's been a good few months since then, so that I got it in May last year, but I didn't actually start using it till June. But since then my art style's completely changed, and I have been working in an A5 sketchbook, and I love working in my A5 sketchbook. It's the one sketchbook I will use every single morning and every single day. But this sketchbook, in all honesty, I was kind of getting fed up with it because it's so large. It would take ages to do one spread, and even then I wouldn't actually complete a full sketchbook spread because the paper was so big. It would just take too long, and then because of the spiral part it wouldn't flow as nicely going across both pages together. So yeah, I kind of got fed up with the size of it well, not quickly, because genuinely I had a good few months where I enjoyed this size. It was square, so it worked well for what I was doing at the time. But even now, so when I'm trying to go onto more of a finalised version of something I'm drawing where I want to use my Winsor & Newton gouache, I then want to use actual watercolour paper, and my watercolour paper is A4 rather than A3, which is what I used to work on. And so when I'm trying to do a composition for my A4s, this paper wouldn't work that well because everything would be slightly squished when it went onto the A4 paper, because the A4 paper is narrower but longer. So I was finding that a bit frustrating because a composition that worked really well on the square paper just wasn't working on the A4 watercolour paper that I wanted to actually use. So that kind of started the part where I then kind of got a bit fed up with this size, and in all honesty that's just kind of continued, as I said, since using an A5 sketchbook, and I'm just not as into the square paper anymore. I think it was really good at the time and it was really handy for when I was planning canvases, but not so much when I actually want to work on paper from now on with my gouache and watercolours. Another thing that I genuinely loved at first was the paper texture. So it's really, really smooth paper. There is genuinely no texture to it at all. And at first I loved that because it's what I was used to. And it's brilliant for working in pen. And honestly, watercolour, that you can do it as long as you can are either okay with the fact that you have less control over the paint because it's going to flow because there's no texture to keep it in place, or you have to do really, really thin washes, which is what I tend to do. So it's really thin washes that will dry quickly for me to then be able to work on. Otherwise, smooth paper, it takes forever for your more water-based mediums. Sorry, that was really poorly worded, but basically because it's so smooth, it can take ages for the paper to dry when you're using gouache or watercolour if you're not doing it in really thin washes. But again, I've been using textured paper a lot more, so I've got cold press and 100% cotton paper, and I've really enjoyed working on both of those. And my latest A5 sketchbook also has slight texture to the paper, and it genuinely just looks a lot better when you are using water-based mediums because you get an added bit of texture to your piece. And I especially like it when doing skin tones on a face because it just automatically gives the face some texture. You know, let's face it, real human skin isn't always completely smooth. So having that texture on the paper really does help, especially when you've got ever so slight poolings of darker colour on the paper. It just shows up blemishes and things that you would have naturally on skin. So yeah, in all honesty, this is, if you want to use something where you've got really smooth paper and it's really large and you've got loads of room, then going for a scrapbook from Paperchase is honestly a really good choice. There is stacks and stacks of paper in it, so it's taken me what feels like forever to actually finish this because there are so many pages in this sketchbook. But I have to say, for me personally, it's probably not something I'm going to get again, just because I'm not working that large anymore. As I said, I like sticking to the more A5 size, and I also prefer working in more water-based mediums, and so having textured paper just for me personally works that little bit better. Now for this, I was just doing a series of portraits to practice, and I wanted to show how the paper actually deals with different types of medium. So I've got dry medium and also some simple cheaper watercolors, and I actually did a lot of water with these. I really watered them down just to show the fact that the paper is barely warping. Now these are very basic line drawings. I didn't put too much effort into these. I think the first page I did quite a bit more detailing and effort. By the time I got to these, I was just a bit like, yeah, I can't really be bothered anymore. Although I genuinely do like this effect with the circles of colour on the background. Anyway, I hope this was somewhat informative, if a bit rambly. Thank you so much for watching. If you managed to make it this far, you're genuinely amazing. Don't forget, if you did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and if you can, even a comment. All of that is really, really helping the channel out, so thank you so much to everyone that actually watches these videos to the end. It really does mean a lot.